Tremendous! Welcome back to Andertons TV. It's my favourite Geordie in the house. Sorry, Paul Hindmarsh, you've been relegated to my second favourite Geordie. No, you're joint first. Welcome back.
It's a pleasure to be back, especially when surrounded with all these lovely things which are essentially my bread and butter.
Man, it's lovely to see you. Thank you for braving Storm Claudia to get down here as well. So yes, if you haven't already worked it out, we are talking about Van Halen today. Why are we talking about Van Halen, Mr. Dagan?
Because Van Halen, Edward specifically, and his lovely brother Alex, and the rest of the guys in the band, changed music history for the better. In my humble opinion, the world, people say the same thing about the Beatles, like the world changed after the world heard the Beatles. When Van Halen 1 came out, everyone that played guitar just lost their goddamn minds, and it's a tone which is so hard to achieve with not a lot of gear. Mm-hmm. There's no crazy racks, there's no secret, well, there is a bit of secret sauce which we'll talk about in this video, but essentially it's a very simple tone, which I will caveat with the fact that I haven't got Edward Van Halen's fingers. I will not sound like Eddie in this video, so please don't roast me in the comments. People dedicate their entire lives to sounding like Edward, which is awesome, but I'm not one of those guys. I just love it so much and I'm passionate about it. But it's just fun to talk about. There's so many rabbit holes.
But he's your guy, right? In the same way that maybe someone like Clapton or David Gilmour or whatever might be the reason I started playing guitar.
Yeah.
Van Halen's the reason you started playing guitar, right?
Yeah, very much so. Well, not necessarily started playing guitar, but he's the guy that made guitar playing fun.
Right.
When you watch all the crazy stuff, like besides the tapping, just the stripes on the guitars and the faces he pulled and the way they jump off the drum riser and stuff while doing ridiculous things that no one had ever heard before, it makes guitar playing fun. So
you're too young to have, as am I, to have maybe done Van Halen from the start, sort of.
Yeah.
So what was the first sort of Van Halen? Was it one of the more classic, like Jump or something like that? Would have been the first.
I think obviously as a kid
seen?
you'd heard Jump and stuff, but the first time I think I saw Van Halen, I might have heard Running with the Devil or In Talking About Love or whatever. It was the Live Without a Net solo. That
what
big
year
like,
is that?
It's the Sammy Hagar era,
right,
so
okay.
it's
a bit later.
Yeah, that's where my love for Kramer guitars came from. Because as a kid, I saw that stripy Kramer with that on the headstock. My naivety thought that it was the guitar that did that. So in my entire life, I wanted Kramers, and I know Kramer are a thing these days, and I've got a couple of them. But I thought it was the magic of that guitar, and ever since that video, I've just been hooked. Because you're a blues guy. He has a wonderful way of swinging these bluesy riffs and licks in a way which melts faces without any crazy modal scales or sweep picking and stuff. It's just such a romantic way to play guitar, but it's just so electrifying at the same time.
I think love or hate, nobody really hates him, do they? But whether you love Edward Van Halen or he's not necessarily your cup of tea, he's one of like maybe 5 guitar players where you can go through the history of the electric guitar and go, oh yeah, he changed how people, in the same way that I don't know I'm not well versed enough, I don't think, if I go back like pre-Hendrix. I don't know who that guy in the 50s would have been, whether it would have been like a Buddy Holly or one of Elvis Presley's guitar players or something like that, or Hank Marvin even might have been. But certainly, like you end up going, Jimmy was like, okay, no one's done that before, and then Van Halen was like, okay, no one's done that before, and then I'm not even sure. But it's so maybe there are only 2. It's like,
I mean, these days the model equivalent is probably someone like, I don't know, Tosin Abassi or someone doing something so avant-garde and different Henson on the guitar. Tim Henson, people like that.
Maybe even like
what
going
Eddie was
back
doing
a bit
previously.
You might have chosen a Tom Morello or just like guitar players that just go, no one's done that before.
Yeah. Step out the box, make it interesting.
Anyway, look.
Sorry,
one other quick. Are you David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar? Who would?
They're both wonderful.
Not allowed.
It's if you're too precious over one of the two, you just don't like Van Halen as much as you probably should.
Wow.
You should be
You
appreciating...
should be a politician.
I know. That's like, this is the deepest I've ever got in any video when I've talked about bloody Van Halen. But yeah, it's all great. It's all great.
Fair enough. Okay, tell us what we've got here and why, and the sort of the journey, you know. And I appreciate we've got sort of baby versions of the amps that Edward would have used.
Yeah. So do you want to start with the amps?
Yeah.
So obviously it's the what's it called again?
It's a Studio Plexi.
Studio Plexi.
Yeah. So it's like a baby version of a 1959
SLP.
Kind of, 100 watt super lead. Yeah.
Which isn't like famously the amp that Edward used back in the day, but he didn't use it as just the amp. We all know we had the Variac in the back, messing with the voltage to make the amp run hotter than it ever would. Transformers blew, valves blew, but it was the sound.
Yeah.
It was the sound. So the closest we can get these days in your lovely studio without blowing up any of your lovely amps at Andertons is rocking this guy. Pretty much dimed. Both volume, well, high treble is dimed, normal volume's on about 2, treble is dimed, mid's all the way up, bass is all the way down, and the presence is dimed with a sneaky attenuator in the back.
Yeah, so interestingly, high treble, which is the brighter, tighter gain channel, we've got all the beans. On this particular amplifier, the normal channel, which is the sort of the darker of the two channels, if we gun that, it introduces a high volume, a real flubbiness that we didn't like. So
which you wouldn't probably get in 100 watt.
Exactly.
But then the windows would be blowing out the back of the studio.
Yeah, and then we are, like you say, it's a bizarre bass all the way down, presence all the way up, but it's a classic vintage Marshall tone stack where it makes almost no difference where you set any of the
EQs. when the volume is that high, things don't really change that much.
And then we are using a really affordable Bugera power soak to just run this amp at about 80% of its actual volume. No pedals. Really interestingly as well, I just assumed that there'd be some mythology of Van Halen using a boost or a drive pedal in the front of this, but you say it was all done by cooking it with the Variac.
Yeah, of course. And there will probably be people in the comments going, well, on this tour, this gig, he used a rat in the front or something like that.
Right.
But famously, it was just running the absolute nuts off the amplifier and hitting as hard as he could.
So let's have a little listen to what we get from this with no effects. Well, a bit of reverb maybe I think we got, haven't we?
Little thing in there, I was slightly out of tune because in some riffs, Eddie flattens the B string ever so slightly to play Running with the Devil and Unchained, and I forgot to tune it back up, hence why some of that was out of tune.
Well, and talking of the tuning thing, I was going to ask you, is he a classic standard E tuning guy, or is he an E flat guy?
No, that's another thing I forgot to do. Normally an E flat.
Right,
90% of the time you'll find it in E flat, but this lovely Charvel is in standard.
So that was Hendrix was the sort of the first guy I can think where everything's in E flat.
Yeah,
so
every one of my guitars is in E flat.
Is it?
It's the people's tuning. It's the people's tuning, E flat. Sorry, back to the tone. Yeah, that is. I know it's a modern way of doing it, but that's there for me.
Well, what's interesting as well is now I'm not a big Van Halen aficionado, but I think if you go back to the sort of the late 70s, early 80s stuff. You hear there's much more sag and power amp distortion in his drive tone than evolved perhaps during the sort of mid 80s and beyond. And even though this is the sort of the baby version of the Plexi and it's only 20 watts, I can hear it anyway. I can hear the amp struggling to breathe. It's like it's but in a way that contributes to that. That's what we call kind of sag, where the amp's kind of going like, oh my god, I just can't cope anymore.
Yeah, it's more of a feel thing as well, which does affect the kind of thing when you play the percussive Van Halen. Sometimes you want that sag to kind of be more percussive, but at other times it's really not what you want.
With no overdrive pedal, I'm so impressed with how much gain. I mean, this is
the Brown sound.
Yeah, I mean, if you go through the folklore of Marshall, kind of like the next iteration or the next big iteration of this amplifier from Marshall was when it went to the 2203, the sort of JCM 800 era, where in my head I think of like 100 watt super leads as more, that sort of Richie Blackmore-y, kind of Hendrixy kind of era, where it's like, yes, there's overdrive, but not Van Halen levels of overdrive. And yet you've just proved with no drive pedal in front.
Yeah, I mean, you have got to run it really hot.
Yeah.
I don't know how longevity-wise that'd be great. If you do buy one of these little 20-watt amps, maybe do throw an overdrive in front of it for the sake of this, getting the Eddie tone.
You're worried about how fast you might go through tubes if you're gunning it.
Which was a famous thing with Eddie back in the day. Because obviously, cranking the amp to get the tone halfway through, and like you said, the tone changed later on. Then they started modding the amps, like all the Jose mods and stuff.
Play, and I'll wind in this normal volume and also the bass. I'll wind in the bass volume, the bass level first, just to show you how little the EQ on the Marshall amp does.
I'll do something bassy. I was looking that way and I couldn't really tell much was changing.
I've just dialed the normal loudness in now, and this is where I think when you're chugging, you can more audibly hear the sag maybe. Oh my God, it's like 2%, isn't it? It's like
it is
even.
But that's, if anything, it's a testament to how Marshall have made this amp correct to the period, because this is exactly the same thing with Marshalls from back in the day that happened overcomplicated from the modern era. So
tell me about what's the sort of the sort of chronological Edward Van Halen approach to amplifiers? So we're sort of going, we're sort of late 70s, going into the 80s of sort of quite conventional, non-modified Marshalls with using the Variac.
Yeah.
And then what? Then he starts doing the Jose Arredondo kind of...
Pretty much, yeah. There's such a rabbit hole to get down with the Eddie amp thing. Like there's forums and pages and pages and pages of what Eddie used, what's this blurry Marshall in the background of the recording sessions and stuff. So, obviously, like I said before, amp gain getting cranked with the Variac and stuff, going through tubes and transformers. When the modding thing was very prevalent in the 80s, like you said, with Jose and the like, that was a way of adding a bit more gain, whether it be an extra tube, like the famous Cascade mod, which is the Randy Rhoads mod, the Bradshaw mod, early versions of what is now the Dookie mod, the Green Day mod. It's all that Brown Sound mod, which became very prevalent because of Eddie's tone back in the day.
And obviously, Eddie famously went on to do signature amplifiers, but the modified Marshall Plexi that was released earlier this year by Marshall includes that additional gain stage in there and a master volume as well, I think, doesn't it? So
we could have totally used that today as well.
Yeah.
But it is fun to just throw an attenuator on and crank a little Marshall to get the Eddie thing. So yeah.
So we went from stock Marshalls to modified Marshalls.
Yep.
To then obviously he's going, I still need more. And he starts working with Peavey, with a designer called James Brown, to release the first 5150. In terms of the timeline, again, is there an album where you go, you can hear that's the change, and then the guitar sound changes to this much higher gain?
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, that changed with the territory at the time as well. Like going from the music in the 80s with the hair and the solos and the this and that to a lot more of an edgier, grungy thing in the 90s. The guitar tone changed with that. And obviously he started playing the Peavey Wolfgangs. And I should probably be playing a Wolfgang today, but I don't get on with them.
Right, okay.
They're too small. I'm a tall guy like yourself, and they feel very delicate and tiny because Eddie designed it that way to be really easy to play, but they're just a bit small. But with the amps...
Go on then. So what did we choose? A Charvel, just like a relicked up San Dimas type thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's the old Super Strat thing. I could have used one of the EVH Stripe Series ones, which are awesome, but in the 90s, which we'll talk about now, Eddie started using the neck pickup on the Wolfgangs. So I needed something with a neck pickup, with a Floyd Rose, and it's red. So that's one of the new... So this is using Fender and Charvel's kind of Mexican facility to do these relics, which they are, to be slightly critical, they are a more templated relic, aren't they? As opposed to, so they all come out basically with all the dings and the scratches in exactly the same place.
But it's still...
I always find the people that care about that most, though, are other guitar players. Where if you're playing one of these in a crowd in front of your lovely fans that aren't guitar players, they just go, that's a cool guitar.
Yeah,
they don't
I
go,
agree.
actually, that's a template on the guitar.
Yeah, no, I agree. But it's a great... What I guess, yeah, it's whereas, like, custom shop relics,
of course,
no
yeah.
two will be the same. The idea of this is that every single one should be the same. And we've got some Seymour Duncan pickups in there and a Floyd Rose trem. It's very reminiscent of the kind of guitars all those kind of 80s guys were playing, isn't it?
It is, again, back to Eddie's guitars, there's famous stories about how his bridge pickup that Seymour made for him was broken and faulty, and that gave the amp some more tone.
Wow.
Like in the 80s, which ended up being their custom. I think that's the Eddie pickup you can buy these days, that no one calls it the Eddie pickup. There's so much lore about this stupid thing, but it's so fun to go down the rabbit hole.
I was told by someone at Fender that the prototyping for one of his signature pickups, I guess, I don't know, what were they called, Frankenstein?
Yeah.
Whatever it was deliver the first one, he was like, it needs something. So second prototype, third prototype, for every time going, still not quite there like that, until the pickup designer just went, I don't know what to do anymore. So he just gave him the first one again, but told him it was like the 8th iteration. And he just went, that's the one.
Yeah.
Perfect. It's like, sometimes I guess you just have to, that's just how it has to be.
Yeah, I mean, that was around the early 2000s, and Eddie was famously a bit of an arse in the funnest way.
Right.
He just didn't, he knew that everyone cared so much about his tone and wanted to know every last detail.
Right.
And he thought it was hilarious to just send them on a wild goose chase about something and lie, and that's all part of the fun. So I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't even plug those pickups in and just send them straight back, because it's just the Eddie thing, isn't it?
Okay.
Sorry, back to this.
No. So we've kind of like, obviously, PV5150,
Yes.
and then Edward finished his relationship with Peavey and started his own brand, which ultimately then included the guitars that he'd done with Music Man as well. What's the Peavey? What's it called? Is it 6505?
6505 and 6505 Plus.
Right, so they're the kind of like the PV versions of that kind of thing. But obviously now really when we think of the 5150, we think of an EVH kind of brand on the front of it. Let's remind ourselves very slightly of, so this is the Marshall. Here's the It's a completely different beast, and this is on the blue channel. So for people who know, that's the green channel is clean, blue is a driven version of that clean sound, and then we're not even on the red channel, which is sort of the lead channel.
And Eddie famously used the blue for rhythm and just the red for, like a lot of people.
But
do.
it's massively tighter and massively more preamp gain. Now this is a 50-watt amplifier, so some of that openness and the fact that it's not sort of sagging, I suppose, will be because we're running this with full beans. This we're running at like half. It's not even probably half its sort of capacity, if you like. So this has got plenty of room to breathe. And actually, the original ones of these would have been 100-watt, wouldn't they, as well?
Yes, so. And I had one at 100 watts for ages, and I played some pretty sizable stages, and I got past one. And it was the heaviest amp, and I had it in a flight case as well, and I regret selling it because it just sounded phenomenal.
Yeah.
But it's so the handles are on the side of it deliberately because there needs two people to carry it. It's crazy.
That's crazy. So tell us again. This feels like we've set this up much more conventionally with the EQ all much closer to just a 12 o'clock setting. Do you think that's just because by the time he got to here, he was very much like, I'm voicing this to be my amp, therefore at 12 it should just sound how I want it.
That goes back to the whole Eddie really not giving a shit kind of thing. Sorry, but because everyone tells him his guitar tone was the best tone on the entire planet. Obviously, he didn't care that much to then expand on that classic hot-rodded Marshall tone. When it came to designing these amps, 6L6s, totally different to the EL34s, a much tighter, much gainier tone, when everyone around him is telling him that his tone on Van Halen 1 or 1985 was the best guitar tone ever. So obviously, he didn't care that much about his tone. He's just constantly chasing for a tone in his head somewhere and trying to get it by changing things, hence why this is tighter and completely different to those guys.
We haven't. I mean, let's just show people again. So I mean, I can't. Here's the clean is quite indistinct, really. It's like it's just a clean sound.
This is famously one of the best amps with a clean channel, though. Like a lot of heavy metal amps, as we know, don't really cater to the clean players and stuff. The EVHs always have great clean.
The blue channel.
Notes in there somewhere.
And then why not the red channel? Here we go.
Which breathes absolute fire, this channel. It's insane. Just that attack. That sounds nothing like the record, but when you play that riff, it just puts you back to watching Eddie at one of his last shows with all the reverb and all that gain and the tightness and the attack of these amplifiers.
It's the
put a smile on your face. Yeah.
It's the tightness, I think. Normally speaking, for me, I'm not a big fan of high preamp gain.
A lot of the time with high preamp gain, it's very forgiving. Like you kind of get lost in the game, like turning on a wah, you can kind of play a bit messy and sloppy and it'll kind of cover for that. With these amps, they're so brittle in a very pleasant and articulate in such a dynamic way. I just love these amps, they're great.
I really don't think there's a bad sound in that. And again, I think he, very, very occasionally, a signature product comes along and transcends the artist. You know, the Les Paul being the most obvious, I suppose, signature product that transcends it. But Van Halen's amps, way more than his guitars, have completely transcended him.
I've never thought of that. That's very true, isn't it?
Yeah. It's just an amp that sounds amazing, and tons of other artists.
You kind of forget that this is the Stripe from the Frankenstrat and stuff. It just is an EVH amp.
Yeah. From that kind of mid to late 80s period, right through to sort of the last stuff that he was doing with Van Halen, did it kind of stay? Can the journey largely be broken down into sort of 3 steps, like vintage Marshall, modded Marshall, 5150?
At its core, yes. But again, like I say, people will comment and talk about how there was lots of transitional periods and different amplifiers that made appearances here and there. But that's just essentially what it is, and how it goes down.
You've put some, again, I'm still in my own mind sort of slightly blown away by the fact that he just wasn't an overdrive, not even a tube screamer just for some tightness. He's just a straight in, use the amp. But you have got some modulation pedals here, all of which again are signature EVH products. This, by the way, is not a sponsored by EVH video. This is just Dagan wanted to do something about his favourite guitar player.
So yeah, of course we're going to get all the stripy EVH pedals.
The only one that I was really knew he was synonymous with, and I think you can hear on lots of records, is the Phase 90. But I wasn't familiar with the flanger or the chorus. So tell us about the sounds, and I suppose why don't we start with the Phase 90?
Let's start with the Phase 90. Yeah, it's the simplest effect that makes such a world of difference, and Eddie kind of owns that sound almost these days. If you hear someone playing like solos and whatnot. Could be anyone. If you hear that, it's like, there we go. It's
an aeroplane taking off. That fast picking.
Yeah.
Do that for an extended period, because that's where you get to hear the full cycle of the modulation. It's much more subtle than you might think a phaser pedal would be.
Especially with a script button in as well.
Yeah. But it absolutely just gives that movement to the sound that is so iconic. What are the other kind of famous tracks that he would have used? I'm interested actually.
Everything.
Because he was using MXR back in the old...
Yeah.
Let's have a little listen about how does it change between like a lower gain... I just want this whole rig just be louder. I'm into it now.
We need an audience in a big stage with those halogen lights up top and everything.
And then do the same thing, but over the 5150 sound.
It's just that tone.
There's not a better or worse, is there? There's just you can hear the sort of the timeline of the sort of the Van Halen.
I will say with rock on the old school rig, if anything, because of the way we're running this, like we touched on earlier, it is probably a bit flubby and fuzzy compared to like the clean attack of cranking a big round back in the day. So you're probably losing a bit of it in that. But we're making up for it with the 5153.
And then tell me about, you know, when I mean the flanger thing we did right at the beginning, and I loved that you were playing a tune, and the flanger is only on for about 10% of the
well, it's
the
the same with
Ain't
Talking About Love.
Right.
So Ain't Talking About Love, the phaser is on the whole time.
Right. Okay.
And for the
so it's
flanger goes on
bits.
and then turns off. Would you mind?
Oh, so this is on all
that's
the time?
on all the time.
Okay. Okay.
There we go. It's the way you use pedals as instruments in themselves sometimes.
Yes.
And no one was really using it like that back in the day.
I can't think of many others where again they are just literally tapping the effect on. The chorus is a funny one, isn't it? Because the phaser and the flanger are relatively conventional. I'm sure you could plug these in and get other emulate any kind of a phase or flange sound. The chorus has got input and output level switches and seems much more subtle, and you can actually overdrive the chorus as well. Which I've not seen in other pedals.
I'm not too clued up on the chorus. It's probably based off a rack unit that Eddie had back in the day, or part of an Eventide or something crazy like that. And obviously the detune effect was huge back in the 80s and the 90s and stuff, so that kind of ethereal movement. But you can capture it with the chorus as well. It's just...
So with a clean sound, or or would you want...
Let's go dirty, but I'll use the volume on the guitar. Pretty Woman, it's just the tone. It's great. It's a chorus pedal, but it's not overcomplicated. It gives you what you want.
Least likely Van Halen cover of all time, isn't it? In that band meeting. What should we do? Let's do a version of Pretty Woman.
I'm 99% sure it was David Lee Roth going, "Can I please just sing Pretty Woman?" So it just so happened that Eddie wrote the awesome riffs and the rest of it.
That was fun, man.
It was cool. Can I just mention one thing on the flanger that you didn't know, and a lot of people don't know with the EVH flanger, is the EVH button. And that is just the Eddie Unchained tone in a nutshell. Like, you haven't got to mess with any effects. It totally bypasses all the parameters and controls that I just need to say. But it's a pedal for one purpose, but that purpose is for the greatest riff of all time.
So you can have one amp from Eddie's kind of, collection.
Oh.
So are you going like, I want the vintage Marshall, I want the modded Marshall, or I want the 5150 era? What are you going for?
Modded Marshall. Then I'd have the best 20 minutes of my life until it exploded. That's all it would be. It's just iconic. Like, that kind of tone is just, it puts a smile on your face and you can chew it.
Yeah.
It's so chewy and lovely.
Yeah.
Like I said, we had a little bit of plate reverb running in the back of these as well the whole time, because Eddie famously used plate in the studio, but for the sake of this, we're using plate. But I think that's kind of it.
I agree. Look, that was fun, man. And actually, what's quite nice, again, just to recap here, whether you go down this route or this route, these are both two of the more sort of better value, sort of affordable valve amplifiers that you can buy these days. So don't be looking here going, oh, they've probably got like, you know, £5,000 for the gear. Not at all.
The Jose Friedman is hidden away in the back
no,
somewhere.
Not at all. Links will be in the description below if you want to find out about the 5150. Like I say, this is the 50 watt version with 6L6s.
The Stealth with the resonance control as well.
Yeah, and they do them with EL34s, and they do bigger versions, but they do smaller versions as well. And then this is the Studio Series Plexi into a 4x12 with vintage 30s in it. That, ladies and gents, is the end of today's video.
I do feel like I need to do this though. I just have
Please.
Oh, where does it go next? It's been a long morning.